Welcome back to Cult Pop. I'm your host, Jim Hall, and today we've got a very special show. Brad Meltzer is returning. He's one of my all-time favorite guests, and he's got another bestseller out there. He's come up, he's knocked one out of the park again. The Inner Circle, Brad, your best book to date. I'm so glad you're coming here today to talk about it. You've really knocked this one out of the park. It's a thriller with all kinds of mystery, intrigue, just everything your fans love. Times 10. It's just absolutely fantastic.
I appreciate it.
Let's jump right in the show today, Brad, and let's talk a little bit about that first today.
Sure. The Inner Circle started for me a couple years ago when I got a call from the Department of Homeland Security. And they said to me, we want you to come in and brainstorm different ways that terrorists can attack the United States. And my first thought was, if they're calling me, we have bigger problems than anybody thinks, right? I was like, this is a disaster. But I was honored to be part of the Red Cell program. And what the Red Cell program does, it brings together out-of-the-box thinkers. Regular citizens, and it pairs them. It paired me as a thriller writer with a Secret Service agent, with a chemist, and we would take major targets and try and destroy them. And it was one of those days where you don't go home excited, you go home terrified, because you see just how easy it is to kill us. But what I was struck by is just how they were calling on regular people. And I looked back through history and was able to trace it back to a man named George Washington. And George Washington used to have his own spy ring. They used to write in invisible ink. They used to send coded messages to each other, and he had his own secret code. And I love that. I love that idea that nobody knows about them because they kept their secrets and took them to the grave. And so I said to one of my guys who used to work in the Department of Homeland Security people, I used to work with them, I said, wouldn't it be cool if in my new novel, what you find out is George Washington's spy ring still exists to this very day? And he says to me, what makes you think it doesn't? And that's when I'm like, okay, I got the plot for my book now, right? I mean, he says, listen, it's one of George Washington's greatest success stories. Why would he ever disband it? And so that's what The Inner Circle is. It's a thriller. It's set at the National Archives, and a young archivist finds out that George Washington's spy ring still exists today. He doesn't know who they're working for, doesn't know what they're doing, but the greatest secret of the presidency is about to be revealed. And that's where The Inner Circle as a book opens.
Okay, well, let's talk a little bit about the opening. Beecher White, your main protagonist, the archivist that you're speaking of, he gets in contact with his former first love, first crush, first kiss. So a real important person to him in the scheme of things, and he's simultaneously going through some trouble in his life with his wife having left, passing and all that. And Beecher White is just a great protagonist. Love the guy. And I can see when anybody's going to read it that they can put themselves in the position of Beecher. That here you go, trying to help somebody, you're trying to do a favor, trying to show off a little bit, and then stumble into some of the most incredible series of events that lead to all kinds of danger and stuff. Let's talk a little bit about just I don't want to give away too much so that we sell the book, but just in the first 50 pages alone, you've got so much action going on. And to me, what Beecher is experiencing is he sees, again, think of the first person who gave you your first kiss. Mm-hmm. That person is in your brain forever, whether you like it or not. And I think that right now, all across the country, people are on Facebook, they're on the internet, and they're reconnecting with these old friends. Yes. And to me, I couldn't crack Beecher as a character until I figured out that's where we were as a nation. And to me, we are all every day in being confronted on Facebook and on the internet. When we're confronted with those people, we're confronted with our past immediately. We're a whole country that's really facing our past every day in a way we never did before as a culture. And I was just fascinated by that, because I don't care where you go, I don't care what you do, when the person who gave you your first kiss calls, you are paying attention, right? You are right back in whatever grade you were, and you are a child again. And I love that. And so Beecher's just trying to impress the girl, the most obvious thing of all, and the most human thing of all. And that's why people, I think, relate to Beecher, is he's just being human. He's just like us. And that was always the goal in his design. But what I wanted is, here's a guy who spends his time in the past in the National Archives. He spends his time obsessed with the past. He's confronted with his past. And here's a guy who can't find his own future. And to me, that's an interesting character. And that's where I think we all are right now. Brad, through your past, through your show that you're currently doing, through the previous novels you've done, you have a lot of experience in Washington. You do a lot of stuff, and you bring some really neat direction to the books, where and a lot of cool. Your books go in a lot of cool ways that people wouldn't normally. Most thrillers don't have the cool twists and turns with facts behind them. Though my point with this one is the president has a room in this archive and buildings throughout Washington.
And I think that's just a really neat. Talk a little bit about this special room the president can go read any type in this archive.
Yeah. It's called a SCIF, and a SCIF is an acronym, SCIF. It's for Sensitive Compartmentalized Information Facility. And I didn't know what it was. We were walking around the archives, and we passed by this room with a lock on it. Looks like a safe, like a vault. I said, "What's in that room?" And they said, "Well, that's a SCIF." I said, "What's a SCIF?" And they said, "Well, if you're reading a very sensitive document, you don't just read it at your desk. Okay, you got to read it in a place that's protected. Big Brother doesn't just work for the United States anymore, right? He's everywhere." And so there are rooms all across Washington, D.C. in every government building that they're lead lined. They make sure there's nothing coming up through the floor. There's no windows or vibrating windows so no one can see him. There's on the vents, there's bars on the vents to make sure Tom Cruise can't come down on his trapeze, right?
Right?
I mean, these are CIA certified rooms, and they're all over. The White House has SCIFs. The National Archives has SCIFs. The Department of the Interior. You name any building in Washington, D.C., there are SCIFs there, special rooms to read these highly classified documents. And not just any classified, but really high classified document. And the best, most powerful people in Washington have a SCIF in their house. That's a power play. And I just was obsessed with these things. I was like, I want to see one. I want to go in one. I want to know what it looks like. Take me in one. And I was just obsessed with this idea that there's all these rooms in a building, and then there's this metal lead-lined room.
Yes.
That's incredible. And I said, listen, I can make up whatever I want, but any reader knows when they read that scene, that's true.
You're right. That's what really impressed me when I read that. True. I thought, wow, that's cool.
And that really and that's what I like to do. I don't do blood. I don't do gore. I don't do gratuitous violence. That's silly to me. That doesn't scare me. You know what scares me? What can really happen. The scariest story of all is a story that can really happen.
Okay, I'm always leery when we do interviews for thrillers like that. I don't want to talk too much about the book and ruin it for somebody out there reading it. Suffice it to say, Brad has knocked it out of the park, as I've said 3 times already. It's an amazing book. And pick it up. What I want to talk a little bit about the book is in your foreword, you thank some very interesting people. Number 1, President George Bush, President George Washington. Talk a little bit about those 2 thank yous.
Yeah, George H.W. Bush, the dad, senior, wrote me a letter years ago. And he said, "I read your book, The Millionaires, and could you sign a copy for me? You know what? You're the president. I'll send you a free book. Right? You get a free book, no question." And I sent him a free book, and he helped me do research on a novel. And when I was researching this book, I had a theory. There was this great story I heard that Ronald Reagan, when he was his last moments in power, he wrote a note that said, "Don't let the turkeys get you down." And he slid it into the Oval Office desk, and he left that note for President Bush, who left a note for Clinton, who left a note for W., who left a note for Obama. It's the greatest private tradition of the modern presidency. I love that story. So I wrote to former President Bush Sr., and I said, could I move in my new novel? I said, in the inner circle, could you move the information about the president's spy network in those letters? Could you hide him in those letters? And I waited for a response. And the response came, and I opened it up, and it said, the president wants you to have this. And I looked at the attachment of the letter, and it was the secret note that Bush sent to Bill Clinton, and he sent it to me.
Oh, wow.
And it was awesome. I mean, and just to have that, it was like having a piece of history thrust right in, in your lap. And immediately I started looking at it, and I said, is this in code? I started checking to see, is it in Freemason code? Is it in these old codes? I checked to see if every third letter of every word said, "I hate you, Bill." I mean, I was like, what is this thing? But what he sent me was taught me so much about what it means to be president, what it takes to be president, and it informed so much of the book where the president's such a vital character. It made me make him a living, breathing person. So I had to thank him. George Washington, I thanked. He didn't write me any letters, so I'm a little upset about that. I hold it as a grudge. But the truth is he gave me really the whole plot of the book, because in what he created in his Culper ring, in his secret spy ring, inspired, as you see through the book, I didn't make it up. That invisible ink, writing between the lines of letters, those were all George Washington's spy tricks. And to this day, the FBI and CIA use a variation of the invisible ink formula that he used. And I think that's just incredible. So I definitely owe him one for that.
Okay, well, I want to say a couple final words about the book, then we'll talk about your show. Just absolutely loved it. I really like a connection between Clementine K and a previous character in a book.
Yeah,
I thought that was fantastic. That. So for readers who are going to be familiar, saying, "Okay, hold it."
Yeah.
And so I went back.
And the book's not a sequel; it's a brand. You can read it and enjoy it. But if you do,
book, but it just happens to be where worlds kind of collide. I thought that was very cool, and with this book, it's not giving anything away, but you've really left it open where there could definitely be a sequel, and I really like that.
I appreciate. Yeah, after 8 books, I felt like I've never done a series. I wanted to try a series, and I knew when I plotted this book out, it was going to be over a longer number of books, and so this gets to be the first, and hopefully a bunch.
Well, again, you've done a masterful job as always, and just absolutely loved it. And now, keeping with the theme of all the secrets and the secrets that are in Washington and all that, you happen to be hosting a great show now on the History Channel, Brad Meltzer's Decoded, talking about all kinds of secrets. We've had everything from D.B. Cooper to 2012 to the 2012 conspiracy. We've got episode
Statue of Liberty, right? We did Statue of Liberty. We did John Wilkes Booth.
The episode that's, I think, tonight kind of deals somewhat with your novel.
Yeah, no, tonight's episode actually, the episode that's airing this week, is actually about the inner circle. It's about George Washington spying, and I love it because you get to see the invisible ink, you get to see how he did it, but best of all, you get to see the inner circle on television, making it the most self-serving hour of television in all of history, and my publisher is very thankful for that.
Well, I think that's brilliant. You might as well help your sales. I wanted to throw one suggestion in, as I'm hoping you have season 2, 3, 4, and 5, Oak Island. I've always been intrigued by that.
I don't know what Oak Island.
Oak Island is that there's an island off of Halifax where there's supposedly Templar treasure or something buried underneath there.
Send it to me, pal.
I'll send you some stuff.
It's been around.
But can you tell us some more about what type of stuff? Are these stories that you couldn't find a way to put into a book, or just things that have always gnawed at you? What what's the basis? What will you approve? This is a great idea, and let's make this into an episode of Decoded. This doesn't quite.
And it's the Supreme Court definition of pornography, which is when you see it. I mean, some of the episodes I just couldn't work in a book. The cornerstone of the White House, the very first piece of the White House, I've been trying to work into a book for 5 years and haven't been able to do it. And I said, you know what, this one, I'm not going to work it into a book, but let's try and solve it in real life. And that's what History Channel came to me and said, is they said, give us your 10 best mysteries, we'll give you a team to solve them. So every week on Decoded, we take the team out. Some are just ones that I've just been fascinated with. D.B. Cooper is a perfect example, which I just love. It's one of my favorite episodes.
And I think you solved.
I mean, it's an incredible. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. We had a great time doing that. We never thought we'd find what we found, and to this day, the brother still emails me and says I'm convinced more than ever, and it's just been incredible. And some are just ones that are just good story. I mean, what Decoded has in common with the books, has in common with Heroes or anything else I work on, is it has to be a good story. And if it doesn't have a good story, we have no business doing it. So some of them are just, when you see it. I mean, that one with John Wilkes Booth, I had John Wilkes Booth, the family lawyer who represents John Wilkes Booth's family, who shot Abraham Lincoln, emails me and says, listen, this is years ago. I mean, this is got to be 5-6 years ago. Says to me, I represent the family of John Wilkes Booth. We want to dig up the body out of the ground. We believe that he is not actually buried in the coffin. You want to hear our story? Yes, I want to hear that story, right? That's the story I want to hear. And so we said, let's do that one. And we really just had a great time doing them. Tonight's is an actual fun one for us because we get to do what are the real parts of the book. But to me, again, it has to be a good story.
I'm a big fan of the History Channel. I like a lot of those shows, the Ancient Aliens and things like that. What I love in particular about your show is that sometimes some of the shows get off the rail a little bit and there's no voice of reason.
Right.
You add a lot of fun to it, where you've talked about your love of comics on one particular thing, and you add all kinds of fun, but you're always the voice of reason. You slow things like, hey, okay, this is maybe a little much, but what if this point is just a little bit of truth?
Right.
And I like that you're the voice of reason in the show.
I mean, and you know what, credit to History Channel. When we started, they didn't know where my baseline was, and they said, they originally put dialogue in because they want to see what I'm going to react to. And there was this line that said, that me saying, I'm worried that the Illuminati have infiltrated the Freemasons and they're all going to eat our babies and the team is in trouble and what's going to happen. And I'm like, I don't believe this is true. I know the team's not in trouble. They have a camera crew with them. Nobody's going to die tonight. And I was like, let's grow up, people.
Right.
And I was terrified that they were going to come back and be like, no, you have to scare people. You have to, and I was like, I don't want to fearmonger. On the first episode of the show, one of the things that the producer said to me was, on shows like this, the less facts you have, the more scary music you play. And I said, that is so true, right? I mean, think about it on any show. It's just fantastically
That's a production
true,
secret, sure.
right? And so I said, I never want to do that show. I want to do the show where we find truth. And listen, we have our scary music, make no mistake,
sure.
but like we try to always not fearmonger, but give you a reality. And sometimes it's a reality check. And history, to their credit, said, great, that's what the point of view we want. And the fact that they were so open to us being honest was, I think, credit to the show and why it's actually working.
Well, I think it's working really well. It's funny, I do this show quite a bit. I have 40-some episodes now. And when I mentioned I'm going to be interviewing Brad Meltzer, of course, I got a lot of fans that know you from the book, but you're interviewing Brad Meltzer from the show?
That's funny.
And so that's really neat. And here you've been writing books forever, but you get out there and you're really, I don't know, I think it's just a fantastic show, and I wish you continued success.
The nice part is I got my first time ever recognized in my whole life last week in the bathroom. Which I thought was the most appropriate place to be recognized for the first time, so that was good.
You're like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, no, it was great. I really appreciated that.
Can you give us a heads up to some future episodes that might be coming?
Yeah, the other episodes that are coming, we're doing Bohemian Grove, which is this amazing club, secretive club that's out in California that many presidents have attended. Nobody knows about. It's all male, no women allowed. It's the ultimate men's party. And, again, you put that many presidents in one room, we got to go check it out. And so we went and did that one, and then we also do one on the Atlanta Guidestones, the Georgia Guidestones.
Oh,
and
okay.
they're an amazing, they're kind of like the American Stonehenge.
Yes.
They exist today. They were built 30-something years ago, and I love them because they're right here now. You can go right now. No one knows who built them. No one knows how they got there. And I just thought that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very interested in that. Well, I wish you continued success with that show, and as I mentioned, I hope it goes on for years to come. I would be remiss if I didn't give you a little time today to talk about Heroes for My Son. We wanted to meet up with you when you actually had the book out. Due to scheduling conflicts on my end, we couldn't do it. And I just think it's an absolutely wonderful book. I'm recently married, past year and a half, looking to have kids. I just think it's a wonderful. I took my copy that was sent to my friend who just had a son.
I appreciate
and just
it.
said this. I just think it's an absolutely wonderful book, and I wanted to give you a little bit of time to talk about why that book came about and how you came about writing it.
Yeah, 8 years ago on the night my son was born, I said I'm going to write a book that lasts his whole life. And one day I can present it to him and teach him how to be a real man, and it's going to be great. And rainbows would come down from every direction, the clouds would part, and I was going to be indeed the greatest father of all time, right? But I knew nothing about being a father. I had no clue. I was just an excited new dad. And then someone told me this amazing story about the Wright brothers, and that is every time the Wright brothers went out to fly their plane, they'd bring enough extra materials from multiple crashes, which means every time they went out, they knew they would fail. And they would crash and rebuild, and that's why they took off. And I said, I love that story. I want my son to hear that story. I want my daughter to hear that story. I want them to know that if they have a dream and they work hard, they can do anything in this world. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to collect a book of heroes for him. So I've been working on the book for over almost a decade, and eventually it turned into a collection of Jim Henson and Rosa Parks and Mr. Rogers and Martin Luther King Jr.
And just so diverse and so wonderful. And every story, I've passed the book along, my wife and I, it's just an absolutely wonderful book. The story is maybe a page or two, maybe three.
Yeah, no, they're one. It's one page, one page for each one. Yeah,
spread out for the picture.
It's a picture on one side and a page on the other.
It's just absolutely fantastic stories. And I was really pleased when I read that you're planning maybe in 2012.
Yep, in 2012. What happened was, since the book came out, I had a daughter, and the daughter said, "Where's my book?" So I did Heroes for my son. So now I'm working on Heroes for my daughter. And let me tell you, the most important page in the entire book is the last page in the book. And the last page of the book is blank. And it says your hero's photo here, and on the other side it says your hero's story here. And I promise you, you take a picture of your mom or your dad, a grandparent, a military member of your family, a teacher in your life, and you put their picture in this book, and you write one sentence about what they've done for you. That's the most beautiful page in Heroes for My Son. And that's the page that people react to, is that they can give this gift of heroism. And we all bitch about heroism, and why do people look at athletes and stars and dumb reality show people? But we forget that we have a chance to influence this. And this is a book that's for dads on Father's Day, and it's for kids that are newborn, it's for high school graduates, and kids who are a little lost and need a little bit of direction. And I love the fact that all these varied groups are finding this book and finding something. And the book, is not about famous people. It's about what we're all capable of on our very best days.
All right. I'm normally not one. I'm not a self-help book kind of guy. I'm not one to read inspirational quotes. And I was inspired almost to tears reading that. I mean, I was really inspired
I appreciate
with that.
it. I'll give you my one. Do we have time for one story?
Sure,
from it?
Please.
So one story, one of my favorite ones is, there's a guy, and listen, everyone knows Thomas Jefferson. Everyone knows George Washington. We know Abraham Lincoln and Rosa Parks. One of my favorite ones in the book is a guy named Frank Shankwitz. And Frank Shankwitz is a police officer who finds out about a boy with leukemia who also wants to be a police officer. And so Shankwitz has a little motorcycle riding course made for the boy. He gets little motorcycle wings for the boy, and they have this great day, and then the boy goes into a coma. And when he's done, Frank Shankwitz, the police officer, goes to the boy's hospital room to pin little motorcycle wings on the boy's shirt. At which point the boy wakes up out of his coma and smiles. He then goes back into the coma, he dies, and on the way home from the funeral, this boy, who's now dead, the Frank Shankwitz, the police officer, looks at his buddy and says, you know, we made that kid really happy for just one day. We should do that for other kids. And that's how the Make-A-Wish Foundation was born.
Yep.
And I never heard that story,
no,
right? We all know the Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Beautiful.
I never knew that's how it started, but I want my kids to hear that story. I want my daughter to hear that story. And that's what Heroes for My Son is to really inspire people and show them what they're capable of.
I can't encourage people enough. The link is going to be up on the website, and you've seen Brad's website throughout the show. Go to his website, look up information about the book, and pick both books up. When you get a chance, pick up The Inner Circle, buy Heroes for My Son also. It's a fabulous, fabulous book. Brad, kind of switching gears right now. If I didn't ask this question, fans of Cult Pop would kill me, but you did your wonderful run on Justice League, did some great stuff with Buffy in the comics world. Anything around the corner in 2011 or 2012 that you're looking to be doing in the comics world?
You know, it purely depends on me trying to find time. I'd love to do it. Anyone who knows me knows I'd love to do it. And I'm talking to, obviously, DC to try and figure out some timing things. And but right now, nothing planned so far. And I just got to figure, we have to finish Decoded. We have to get, now that the Inner Circle's out, and then after all that's settled, I feel like I can look and say, okay, what's interesting. But obviously, anyone who knows me knows that I love those characters.
Okay, well, Brad, in closing, I want you to be able to just tell folks at home the website's been up throughout the show. But if you want to tell people at home your website,
sure,
so that people can visit you.
Sure. The website is, if you go, it's www.bradmeltzer.com. It's like Seltzer with an M, Meltzer, and you can go there. The first chapters are always free. There's lots of fun videos, and there's clips from history channels. Brad Meltzer's Decoded, which, let's be clear, is the greatest title of all time. It's called Brad Meltzer's Decoded. How could I not love that? Yeah,
nice title. And the website's really nice because you do post just about every day. You've got something going on in your life. That's nice. A lot of nice interactive stuff. So it's a nice daily visit, nice stop. So good website. Brad, I want to thank you as always. I just really love your books. You're one of the authors I say in life. It's like Elmore Leonard or Stephen King. When your books come out, we've become friends. Put that aside. I absolutely love your books. And as soon as your book's out, I'm like, get me in line. I got to get that book.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. I appreciate it.
I know it's going to be fantastic. We loved having you on as always, and I look forward to you coming back in the future.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks so much, Brad.
Appreciate it, always.
Okay. Well, folks, that's another episode of Cult Pop. We thank you so much for watching. As always, if you missed something throughout the show, go to Brad's website. You'll be able to find all the information we were talking about, or check us out at the Cult Pop website, www.cult-pop.com. Check out all the episodes, rewatch this one again. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bulldozing the basement of the White House. Wow.
Harry Truman rips apart the walls of the White House. The guy tears everything apart. They bring in minesweepers. They bring in different things to find it. This little beep, beep, beep goes off, and then he says, yeah, you know what, forget about it. Let's not look here anymore. Wait, go back. What do you mean don't look here? I want to know what's there. I want to know where it is, if it's in there. I want to know what's in it. I want to know if George Washington's frozen head is inside. Tell me what's inside this thing. And that's a good mystery. And I want to know the answer.
Hey,
got something good, huh?
this is really good. Well, just check this out. These are the Truman renovations of the White House.
This is the White House?
And
it's completely gutted.
look how deep down into the foundation of the White House they are, right?
Amazing.
Minesweep goes through, and they get a ping. It looks to me like Truman found the cornerstone, and Truman stops the renovation.
I had to call in every favor I could, but I managed to get Buddy, Mac, and Scott inside the House of the Temple. This is Freemason headquarters in Washington, D.C. And Mac just found something that she thinks might be a piece of the actual White House cornerstone. We have no idea what it is yet, but let me tell you, when it comes to the Masons, it will always be a good story.
this.
Oh my God.
This is the temple room.
Very, very impressive.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
Inner circles and outer circles. I'm not seeing any of that in here. Are you a member of the inner circle or the outer circle?
Well, Freemasonry has 33 degrees. You know, I wish I knew the powers that I had being a member of this, because when I received the 33rd degree, I found out that I still had to pay for HBO and Cinemax. You know, there was
That's gotta be disappointing.
there were no great benefits that went with that. I mean, it's simply an honor, really. That's really what it is.
Now, we've heard that the ultimate purpose of the Masons is to take over the world. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Right. You know, I have read that. I'm the archivist and historian of the Supreme Council. I have access to all of our most important documents. In my experience, I've never seen the kind of lunacy that I read about on the internet.
But there's some that believe that cornerstones have some sort of magical power.
You mean like supernatural power?
Well, I guess. I mean, you have a cornerstone here, right?
All buildings have a cornerstone.